Hello, this is Dr. Jeff Craig, Superintendent for West Aurora Schools, and today we're welcoming to our podcast episode number 12, Mr. Pete Baker, Dean of Students at West Aurora High School. Welcome to the podcast, Pete.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Craig. I'm honored to be on here.
Well, we know we like to probe down some interesting backgrounds, but also it's a way to introduce some of our folks to the rest of the community. But we like to be able to talk about our own folks. People will think I'm nuts and I'm just dyslexic, but I will call you Mr. Baker, I'll call you Pete, I'll call you Coach, and all three apply. So don't be offended if I switch them up a little bit.
Sounds good.
So as many of our podcast participants, you have a varied background, both in and outside of education. You've been an Army Ranger, Democracy School Leadership Council, social studies teacher, cooperating teacher, mentor, social studies teacher, a wrestling coach, softball coach, and now in the very interesting and grinding job of Dean of Students at West Aurora High School. So let's talk a little bit about your educational experiences. How did all these opportunities that I've just kind of listed off here, how did they help you get into this position you're currently in?
So I'll back up to the end of my military experience. I enlisted in the Army in 2002, and I got out of the Army in 2007. And, I had a pretty good go in the military. It was kind of, I could have re-enlisted or I could have gotten out. But getting an education was something that I always wanted to do. And it was always a goal of mine. So when I got out of the service, I wasn't 100% sure what I wanted to do. I definitely wanted to get a 4-year degree, and I was kind of caught between maybe teaching, maybe being a police officer, maybe being a firefighter, but I wasn't 100% certain. And in my first 2 years, I was down at the University of Illinois at Chicago. I decided, hey, maybe I'm interested in education, and I wanted to kind of put my foot in the door somewhere. So
Sure. I
started to apply for coaching positions. I was lucky enough to get hired for a freshman B baseball coaching position at my former high school, Glenbard West, and that was my first gig in education. And I had no idea what I was doing. I had 10 players, and we weren't very good. I think on the season we went about 4-18. But throughout that process, I developed such a strong bond with those kids because, at the end of the day, I knew, all right, this isn't really about wins and losses anymore. This is going to be tough any way we put it. I got to make this an experience for these kids. And we practice exceptionally hard. All 10 of those kids showed up on time every single day, and they put in their effort. And with that team is nobody would ever say that a 4-18 team is a success, but for me, that's what got me hooked in education. That's when I fell in love with it, and it was about providing a great experience for those kids. So anyhow, long story short, that ultimately led me to get a degree. And I got a degree in the teaching of history from University of Illinois at Chicago, and West Aurora was the first school that I got a job at. And I was very fortunate to be in an awesome social studies department. I was also very fortunate to be able to coach 2 sports along with teaching history and American government. I got to coach wrestling, girls softball, and from the time I've been at West High, I fell in love with the school and the community immediately. It's just such a unique place to work. We have such an incredible history here. We have great kids. We have a great administration. I've just been surrounded by awesome coworkers the entire time. I had no interest in being an administrator. I didn't, and I was enjoying teaching and coaching. And one of the administrators that I work with, Ron Murphy, said, "Hey, if you're ever interested in this, maybe you should apply, or maybe you should enter a master's degree program in educational leadership."
Did Mr. Murphy give you some cash advance to mention his name on the podcast today?
No, not at all. No. So anyhow, I took his advice and I enrolled in an educational leadership program at Aurora University. And during that time, I was also fortunate enough to where an internship just opened up to be a dean. So I went from being a social studies teacher in January overnight to being a dean the next day at West High. And as much as I enjoyed teaching and coaching, I really enjoyed being an administrator, being a dean. I was able to work with an awesome team of administrators and deans and house personnel at the high school. And, the thing I really enjoyed about it most was just you really get to help out a lot of students, that struggle. Mm-hmm. And it's just constant problem solving, and at the end of the day, I really enjoyed helping those kids that needed that asset.
It sounds like when you describe your earlier coaching experiences was a developmental level not only for the students and the kids, but for you as well. Cutting some of your leadership chops in those experiences. We all go through. We have a passion for something. We get into it, go, holy cow, this is not what I'm sure I signed on for. We got parents maybe that are barking at your kids that are doing certain things and having to resolve some of those other issues. You touched a little bit about very early on. You talked about you enlisted in the Army, and so you've had a variety of experiences outside of education. How do you think some of those experiences have influenced your current role?
So just to back up a little bit, I grew up in a military family. My father was a Vietnam vet. Both my grandfathers fought in World War II. I have an uncle who was in Panama. I have another uncle that was in Vietnam as well. And I have a brother who is currently in his 21st year of military service. And my sister-in-law, John's wife, is in her, I want to say, 10th or 12th year of military service as well. So anyhow, it was something that, something I was always interested in. And then when I graduated high school, it just happened to be that perfect storm of 9/11 happened right around the corner. Plus with my big family history, being 19, being young, being, confident, wanting to go and save the world, all of that coming together is why I enlisted in the military. So the unit that I wanted to be in was an elite unit known as the 75th Ranger Regiment. And, I served for about 5 years. I did 5 combat tours. I went to Iraq 3 different times. I went to Afghanistan twice. And I remember when I got out of the Army, I was applying for jobs anywhere. I was applying, just to make some extra cash while I was going to college.
Sure.
And we were like, what skills do I really have to offer in the civilian world coming from a special operations infantryman?
Yeah.
And I wasn't thinking about it the right way. I was thinking like, oh, I know how to shoot weapons. I know how to build a bomb. I know how to clear a bridge or things like that. Really what I should have been focusing on was a lot of the things that I did gain. And one thing, was an adaptive, progressive mindset. And I think in the military, you are presented with so many problems. And anytime you have plans in the service, like you plan to go on a mission, it never goes as planned. Things fall apart all the time because there are just so many elements and obstacles that get in the way of what you're trying to do. So with that said, that progressive mindset, being able to adapt, improvise, and overcome is certainly applicable to what I do on an everyday basis as a dean. Because as a dean of students, you'll have your day mapped out where you have, a parent meeting here, you want to do attendance this hour, you want to handle some discipline this hour, meet with this teacher, etc. And then that all goes out the window because events happen.
Sure.
And you have to be quick on your feet and you have to be adaptive. So I definitely think that applies. Other things that I picked up, just putting one foot in front of the other. Education's a really tough job. I think that teachers, support staff, administrators, it's hard. It's a grind, and it's day in and day out. And definitely something I learned in the military was when things get hard, you have to put one foot in front of the other, and you press on until you achieve your objective. And some just like a great quote I can always remember thinking about in the military was like, tough times never last, but tough people do. And I certainly think that's applicable to education as well. The other thing is just taking care of your buddies. I think having a positive mindset and placing the needs of the people around you before the needs of yourself, is certainly applicable to education as well. And I try to do that with my students, and I try to do that with students and staff now as an administrator.
I would guess that there's probably a component of leadership that you glean from your experiences there as well. Whether it's one person or 10 people or 30 people, being able to, as you say, take care of your buddies, but provide some vision of where you're going, how you're going to get there, and then provide the right resources to get it done. Yeah, I would be remiss if I didn't extend a very authentic thank you for your service to you and to your family, who have all committed to providing the blanket of protection that we enjoy. And we're glad that you're here. I know you may hear thank you for your service, but we appreciate that you're physically here as well.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Craig. I'm very fortunate.
Absolutely. I had my youngest, my 2 boys both served, and certainly value what they brought to the table as well.
Thank you for their service.
Absolutely. You know, you talked a little bit about, and it's been a part of your life and your background in athletics. Talk a little bit about how that has helped you be successful both in your personal and professional world.
So I was a three-sport athlete in high school. I played football, I wrestled, and I played baseball. And I was not a great high school student. I was a middle-of-the-road student. But, you know, I fell in love with sports, and that was my carrot that drove me to do okay in high school.
Sure.
And
as it is for many, as you found in your current role, right?
Absolutely. So, you know, one thing I try to do as a dean, I work with a lot of students who may struggle with grades, attendance, behavior, whatever it may be. You know, and the traditional path of education might just not be something they enjoy all the time. So one thing I constantly try to do is to find that one asset that they can connect to in a building that can give them a better experience, that can be their hook to want to get into building and go to school every day. So, you know, that's something I take from my athletic experience. I try to apply what I do now. You know, the other thing is just teamwork. Teamwork and a positive mentality. I think I was on some great teams, and I was on some not so great teams. And I think the great teams, the one thing they all had in common is, one, we had fun. All right, we were happy. We were enjoying what we do, even when it was tough. You know, you try to carry yourself in a positive manner all the time, and you feed off of each other. When you collectively a bunch of people doing that, and you feed off of each other in a positive way, it's an awesome experience. And then I learned from being on the not so great teams, it was usually the opposite of that, right? You get certain people that were doing their own thing, they're not on the same page, they carry themselves negatively, and that spreads as well. So I think, you know, teamwork and then just having a positive mentality, and I try to model that on a daily basis, and I hope that that's contagious.
Yeah, you talked a little earlier about the grind of an educator, and the grind, you know, specifically in the dean's role. I sat in that chair for 7 years myself, and yeah, it gets, you know, it makes you reflect a little bit. It makes you question. Same with sport. You know, you think about all the practices, all the preseason, all the training, the off-season stuff. You know, there's a point in time where you kind of go, what am I doing here? You know, and you just got to, I think some of those athletic experiences, those leadership opportunities help carry you to that. You talk about putting one step or foot in front of the other. It's like showing up the next day. Hey, it's what's the alternative? Quit?
Right.
Go away? And I think that's something that you're a testament to is perseverance, resilience, being able to find the positive side. And then I notice a lot of times you will talk briefly about your experience, but how does it apply to my teammates and how does it apply to our kids? And it's probably been, you know, multiple conversations I've had with you. It's coming clearer in our conversation today, and that's certainly admirable. So I'm gonna ask you a two-parter, push you a little bit both directions. Whatever realm you want to talk about, personal,
Okay.
professional, athletic, dean's role, whatever it might be. Talk about some of your highlights, your successes. You know, if you were going to create your personal reel of really cool things if you're selling, and then what are some of the challenges you faced?
Well, I would say, I guess if I went post high school, you know, I'm very fortunate to have joined the military, and I was able to go off to combat and be lucky enough to come back uninjured. And I set out with a goal in the military to be an Army Ranger, which was hard. It's a hard thing to do. I don't know exactly what the attrition rate is, but a lot of people that enter that program, they don't complete it for a lot of different reasons. Oftentimes people get injured. You know, sometimes people quit, or maybe they just get into it and they realize, this isn't really what I was cut out to do. You know, and they find another path. So for me, just like being able to go in and go through basic training, through AIT, through advanced infantry training, through airborne school, and then to be able to pass the Ranger indoctrination program, and then to pass Ranger school was a huge accomplishment. It was neat, you know, and it was very hard to do. I lost a lot of weight doing it. I was beat up. You know, I had a couple minor injuries that I battled through, so I was extremely proud of that. Getting out of that, though, led me to a very difficult challenge. You know, when I was in the military, I had a huge sense of purpose, and that was an identity. You know, it was the war.
All the way down to the clothes you were wearing.
Absolutely. You know, the war was full on in Afghanistan and Iraq. You know, and when I would come home, you know, as hard as it was, people wanted to talk about it. It was just a popular topic. It was in the news constantly, and that was my identity, and I was proud to share that with people.
Sure.
And when my time was up and I got out, you know, and I took that uniform off, and the military changes so fast. Like when you're out, you're out. And there's benefits and things that you can get, and I can talk about that as well. But I went into a pretty dark place, and I was struggling. That was one of the bigger challenges I've ever faced, in being able to go to school and just be a normal person that blends in with students. Going from that identity to that was really tough. And like I said in the past, I wasn't an academic scholar in high school. So going to college, and I'd been out for 6.5 years. Now I'm going to college, and I'm like, hey, you weren't an Einstein in high school. Now here you are at a university. You got to perform. And that became my task. And it was, I'm going to do everything in my power to complete this, get my degree, and go on and be a teacher. And then, like I said before, when I started coaching and teaching, that gave me a whole new sense of purpose, which was a huge victory for me, a huge accomplishment that I would say that I cherish.
So that's an interesting dynamic you talked about, because you went from this ultimate high of accomplishment, becoming an Army Ranger and going through all those tests, all of those challenges to be able to achieve at a certain level. And then, as you say, you shed the uniform. What are some things that you did to maintain some level of mental health, physical health, just overall, I hate to overuse the word, but social emotional functionality? There are people that are going to be hearing this that will be able to not necessarily acknowledge the same level with the Army Ranger, but have been in dark places because of other transitions.
I think one thing that we all have in common as humans is everybody's going to go through struggle. Life is going to present its challenges at any time to everybody, no matter who you are, no matter how much money you have, no matter how fortunate you are, whatever it may be. For me, one thing I did was I did a lot of excessive exercise. I lived in the city when I was at UIC, and I used to go out in the middle of the winter, and I would run anywhere from 5 to 10 miles, and I'd just throw on my headphones, and I'd just get into like such an focused, intense place, and I would run as hard as I could until I was so physically exhausted, and I was spent. And I at the time, I didn't even realize that was therapy. I had no idea. It was just something I actually enjoyed to do.
Felt like the thing to do, right?
Yeah. I really like to get out in nature. One thing I did in those years was anytime I had an opportunity to travel out west or go to the mountains, I'd go to the Pacific Northwest or the Rocky Mountains or the desert, and get out in nature, and I'd do, long hikes and things like that. It was just a great way to clear my mind. I ran a marathon.
No kidding.
I ran the Chicago Marathon.
Congratulations, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was neat. I'll never do it again.
For all the right reasons, right?
Yeah, so I think that's just something that I never even really realized till I got a little bit older, that was kind of how I handled my stress. Even in my second year of teaching, Dave Zine, social studies teacher, invited me to get on a bike and ride across the country with him. And without hesitation, I was like, sure, that sounds like a great idea.
Why not?
And we did it, and it was extremely hard. But I think I just found new ways to kind of channel all that energy and occupy my mind and handle stress.
How did you know you were on a good path?
I think I was completing my goals while doing all of that. Right? Like I had a goal. I wanted to get a 4-year degree. I got my 4-year degree. I wanted to be a teacher. I became a teacher. I wanted to settle down and get married. And I want to talk about my wife here at some point, but I was able to, I was accomplishing all those things along the way while I was doing that.
That's awesome.
And I think
I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Dr. Craig.
So let me shift a little bit, make it a little bit lighter. Do you read a certain type of book, a certain author? Sometimes people read for information or motivation. Some people just read to get away. But are there certain authors or certain types of books that you get into?
I've always been a big fan of military history. When I taught U.S. history for a while, and that was always my most passionate topic was when we talk about different military campaigns and things like that. But I think the books that I really enjoyed reading would be reading about people that endured just god-awful hardships. And how they were able to adapt, improvise, and overcome those obstacles, and ultimately get on with their lives. I read a book that my father was in called SOG, S-O-G, S.O.G, and that stands for Studies and Observations Groups. And my father was a Green Beret in Vietnam, And there's a small portion of the book that he's in, and it's one story of many of just overwhelming odds of these Green Berets who were working with indigenous Montagnards from Vietnam fighting against the North Vietnamese army.
Wow.
And this would be 5 Americans out with 4 indigenous Vietnamese fighting against company-size elements of North Vietnamese army, and that was such a motivated army. So kind of going back to that dark place that I was in that I was
Sure.
talking about earlier, another big motivator for me was, my father was able to leave the most unpopular war in Vietnam and get treated poorly when he got out, and he was still able to be a wonderful father, a wonderful worker, go on and have a great career. So that was always a motivator for me as well. So anyway, military history books have always interested me. I recently received a book from our athletic department called Raise Your Game.
Yep.
So I've been reading that one by Alan Stein, and he's trained Kobe Bryant, I want to say Kevin Durant. One of the big takeaways I'm getting from this, though, is he talks about what people do behind the scenes to be great that nobody knows about. Like for sports, how much extra time is put in to getting these athletes to where they want to be that nobody would know about. And some of it sounds insane.
Yes.
But I think the same thing applies to any profession. If you want to be great at it or you want to do well, you can't just show up and go from 8 to 3 or 8 to 4 and beat a drum and be great. There's a lot of things that have to go on in the morning and the evening and the weekends.
Reminds me of a conversation that we've had about the immortal Dan Gable, and the training process that he went through was almost inhuman. He just couldn't stand the vision in his brain that someone might be working harder than him. You think about Alexander Karelin, a 6-time world champion, 3-time gold medalist, just people that just work and work and work and work to hone their craft to such a high level. You're right. There's a lot of I think that applies across our world. If you want to be a good dad, a good parent, just a good human being, you got to work at it. It doesn't just happen by accident.
Right.
So you mentioned your dad as a motivator. Are there other things or other people that you either take some motivation from, inspiration from, people that you admire, or maybe even just things that they've said or done that help drive you through challenging times?
First and foremost, my wife Jackie, who's a guidance counselor at West High. She's an absolute animal. Some people would think,
in a good sense.
Oh, absolutely. she's tough, and a lot of people think that, well, Pete was the one who was an Army Ranger. He's the one that's militant and disciplined and tough. And, Jackie, just on a day-to-day basis, is so consistent in her practices. And she's a great counselor. She's a great worker. And we recently just had a little boy.
Absolutely.
On September 1st. Thank you. Yeah, and just watching her day in and day out as a mom is truly a motivator to me. She's just so loving and so amazing, and she's adapted so well to this process.
That's awesome.
So first and foremost, my wife and my son Pete, my brother, and my mom and my dad. My brother has been in the service for 21 years. And I talked about how I did 5 deployments. I can't even tell you how many John's been on. Just since his entire adult life. He went into the Army in 1998, and since 9/11/2001, he's been back and forth to Iraq, Afghanistan, and plenty of other countries. In the war on terror, and he's excelled at it. He's incredible at it, and never once has he complained about it or said, "Oh, poor me, I fight in the war," or anything like that at all. It's his profession, and so John's definitely a motivator for me.
Absolutely.
And then
see that.
I talked about my father, my mother. My mom is being a new parent has made me realize how much my mother loved me, and I never really figured that out until I had a kid.
Unconditionally.
Unconditionally. And she was an amazing mother, and she raised my brother and I, and we were rambunctious and crazy teenagers. And, she, without a doubt, is, a big reason we both turned out all right.
Well, the folks that are listening to us they don't have the opportunity to visualize, but you can see the pride in your face as you talk about that. So good on you.
Two others.
No, jump in.
Two other motivators. So the other one, the group of people that I work with at the high school, it's contagious. I work in Honor House with some great people, Mary Peters, Stacy Krish, David Heater, Michelle Voris, Amy Winslow, and Steve Janka, and just being a part of that team every day. They motivate me to want to work hard because they all in their individual roles as a team do such a good job.
The security team, those men and women do such a good job on a daily basis, keeping kids safe, and they do a lot of things for our building behind the scenes that nobody knows about.
The deans and the administration that I work with, like I said before, it's contagious. Everybody takes ownership of what they're supposed to be doing on a daily basis, and I think we feed off of each other. So that's a motivator. And then lastly, the students. Some of the kids that I work with, some of the hardships that they go through and are still able to go to school every day, maintain good grades, go home after school, and then go work for 4 or 5 hours and get up and do it on a daily basis is just inspiring to me. It's something that I was fortunate enough that I didn't have to worry about when I was in school. So to me, they definitely motivate me to want to get up and do what's right for them every day.
It's awesome. Sounds like you have lots of facets to tap into when you need to. So I'm going to spin that a little bit on you. You've talked about people that you look to or that motivate you, that kind of keep you going, that help you reflect on the path that you should be taking. Put yourself in that role of that sage advisor. Now that you've been a dean for a little while, you've been a coach, you've had some experiences that you can lean on. So when you talked about your transition, one day you're a social studies teacher, and the next day you're dean of students. Big learning curve. So now turn the hat around and look back and say, someone's coming to you and says, Mr. Baker, I'm thinking about becoming an AP or a dean of students. How do you counsel them?
I think first and foremost, you're going to be put in a position where you have to make some decisions sometimes. And I think first and foremost is always make decisions that are in best interest of your students. And that might require you to have hard conversations with people sometimes in order to do that. But whatever conflict you're dealing with, if you can kind of just remind yourself, all right, when I make this decision, is this best for kids? And if the answer is no, you should probably go the other way. The other one I would say is model the behavior that you expect out of others. If you want people to be on time, be professional, carry themselves a certain way, then you better exceed that. And then I touched on this a little bit in the past, just to avoid negativity. What do we call them? Energy vampires?
Energy vampires, you
yeah,
bet.
And that stuff, that's a real thing. And it spreads. It can spread. And I think, you want to surround yourself with positive people. You want to carry yourself in a positive way. And that spreads too.
You bet.
And it trickles down, and I think it's extremely important.
So I want to go back to a comment you made earlier about your son, Pete. A couple months old now?
It's 2 months.
2 months.
It was 2 months on November 1st.
So newly minted dad. How has that experience changed your world?
Man, the whole pregnancy, I had so many friends of mine and coworkers that have children that are saying, just wait, just wait. You're going to be, and in my head, I'm like, yeah, I know it's going to be this amazing experience. Yeah, when he entered the world at 2:19 in the morning on September 1st, I've never instantly fallen in love with something that fast in my life. It was just incredible, and watching Jackie, and watching her through that entire process, how just strong she was, how tough she was. It was just amazing. And the whole process up until this point it's been incredible. It's kind of shed a new light on me when I'm done with work. I mean, I'm excited. I'm flying home. I'm like, I can't wait to go see the kid. I want to make up for that time.
Sure.
And it's just been an awesome experience.
Well, it sounds like you have a joyful experience with him. That's really incredible. Congratulations, and glad that everyone's doing well and healthy. And it is a life-changing experience that we sometimes get to go through.
Certainly is. I think I'm going to worry for the rest of my life as well. I think that's part of the course.
It is. And my oldest one is 40 now, and you still wonder, worry, try to counsel and guide, knowing that you got to let them go on their world a little bit, but you never quit being a parent. That's for sure. Uh-huh. So, not to try and put you on a spot or anything, but talk about aspirations, professional aspirations, personal aspirations, if you want to share. But what's on the horizon for Pete Baker?
Right now I'm enjoying what I'm doing. My third year as Dean of Students at West High, and I'm really enjoying the people I'm working with. I'm enjoying the kids. So currently, I just want to kind of stay the course and do the best I possibly can
Sure.
in that for as long as that lasts. I think the next step down the road, I'd like to be an assistant principal. I really do enjoy student services. I like the problem-solving aspect of it. I like working with kids and doing everything I can to help kids with attendance, grades, behavior, social emotional issues, whatever it may be. So that's definitely an interest of mine right now, and that's about as far as I'm looking.
Understood. And sometimes you don't want to get too far over your skis, but it's always good to have that next window open up for you. And
it's always good to have a plan.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I tell you what, this has been a blast being able to have a conversation with you, and we really appreciate you sharing some of your insights and some of your personal and professional journey. We're glad to have you not only here today, but we're glad to have you in District 129, and really proud to have you a part of our team. So, thank you for being a part of this podcast.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Craig. It was an honor to be on here.
So, Mr. Pete Baker, Dean of Students, West Aurora High School. Please remember that you can find us on wherever you get your podcasts, including iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and the TuneIn Radio app. I would encourage you to subscribe to our broadcast and give us your feedback so we can continue to improve our discussions. Pete Baker, thank you very, very much.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Craig.